Joseph, but he was never rich.
Strange. Grandma never mentioned that to me.
She's just too proud. At first she refused. She was convinced that I had an agenda, that there were strings attached.
And were there?
Don't be silly. Despite all that had happened, I still loved Joseph dearly. I wanted to help. People from places like this have a deeply rooted mistrust in the rich, passed on for generations. In her eyes, I had become one of them.
So that's all you know about the whole affair?
Are you implying that there's more to know? I left the diagnosis to the professionals. Mrs. Rain accepted the health care, but asked me to stay out of everything else. So I did.
I see. What can you tell me about your friendship with Grandpa?
Joseph was the best friend I ever had. We grew up together, married our high school sweethearts together, went to war together. I can't even begin to count the number of times he's saved my life. I repaid the favor once or twice, but he came up ahead, no doubt.
So when did you two lose touch? I heard that something happened between you and him. What was it?
The truth is, Brian Rain happened. Sharon Evans happened.
My parents?
Yes. They ruined everything with their vile, destructive behavior. I couldn't have that around my daughter or my newborn grandson. Joseph was naive. He believed that anyone could be helped, that anyone could be reasoned with, given a chance. He was just too good, bless him. He should have been harder on Brian, more strict.
What do we think? Say nothing?
Yeah, I think so.
So our family started drifting apart. Eventually my company grew much too large for this little town, and we moved on. Not long after that, your grandfather ended up in that wheelchair. That marked the end of our friendship, for obvious reasons.
All right. Lily Myers.
You bought a number of paintings by Lily Myers. Why?
I'm known to dabble in art from time to time. Martha, my wife at the time, was enamored with the paintings. I believe she first saw them at the high school which the Myers girl attended. Anyway, after the poor girl killed herself, I bought the paintings speculatively. When a young artist with any talent to speak of commits suicide, it can be a wet dream of certain connoisseurs. Shortly after procuring the art, I had it valued by an expert who determined that the value was 3 times the amount I bought it for. Today, I'm sure I would have made my money back tenfold or more if it wasn't for the art theft.
What art theft?
There was a burglary at the mansion I used to own here in town. It was all over the local news at the time.
Well, shit.
Eloquently put.
Cocky.
Do you recognize the call sign Cocky?
Would be strange if I didn't, since I was the one who coined
Aha!
it. It belongs to a fellow named Jimmy Cochran. He was a coward, really. The nickname is somewhat of a bad joke.
Perfect. Thanks.
Jimmy Cochran.
Tell me about Jimmy Cochran. Is he still alive?
In a literal sense. He's been held in a mental institution for years.
Let me guess. Since 81?
Either 82 or 83. I'm fairly certain it was early 83.
Do you remember the name of the institution?
Something starting with an E. Emerson, Everton, or similar.
Ingstrom? Ingstrom Psychiatric Hospital?
Yes, that's the one. You know the place, Kathy.
Tell him the truth about Mom or make something up. I mean, we don't know the truth about Mom either.
It's true.
I'm kind of tempted to choose that just so we can hear the story.
Yeah, I'm into it.
I do. My mother is in there. Sharon Evans? I had her committed about a year ago.
I
we
see.
do that.
It must have taken a lot of courage to do that, Kathy. Mothers have a lot of power over us, more than most of us care to admit.
I guess so. Do you know why Jimmy ended up in there?
Some obsessive-compulsive syndrome. He became fixated with circles and started hurting himself, trying to scratch the circles out of his head.
Creepy.
Circles.
I wonder what set him off. I think I'll check the place out tomorrow. Too late to head back to the city now.
I remember that there was a point when we were talking to Grandma where we could have said something about committing the mom,
Right.
but we chose not to. So I think that's
Right.
probably where the details would have come out first.
Right, yeah, you're probably right.
Can you tell me about the art theft?
Well, somebody broke in, stole the paintings, and got out. Fairly clumsy job. Lots of broken windows. The strangest thing was that I had a Monet, a Rembrandt, and 2 paintings by Picasso, untouched. But every single painting by an unknown local artist, gone.
That can't be a coincidence.
Agreed. Somebody wanted those paintings badly.
I assume there was an investigation.
Yes, Sheriff Truman came by with his deputy a few hours later, but they didn't have much luck. They found a few hairs, which turned out to be from Ruffles, the family dog.
Some stunning police work right there.
Indeed. There was a single witness, though, who said he could make out multiple burglars leaving the scene of the crime, but nothing more than that.
So, I take it the case was closed?
Yes. I honestly didn't care much one way or the other, given the fact that my most expensive pieces were safe and sound.
I think I'll have a chat with the sheriff about the matter, if that's okay with you.
Certainly. I'll call ahead and instruct him to give you everything you need.
Huzzah.
That'd be great.
Ooh.
Thanks, Charles.
Anytime. But I'm curious, what's your interest in the paintings?
I've learned that my grandfather went to Sue and asked to see them, right before he had his injury.
Is that so? Strange.
Church of the Holy Trinity.
What can you
I
tell
think
me
they're the
about
ones
the
who stole
Church
it.
of the Holy Trinity?
Could be.
They seem like any other church to me. But then again, I'm not their usual clientele. Weddings, baptisms, and funerals are just about what I can muster. And I always leave early.
Alright, now, which of these items should we ask him about? Photo of the soldiers, probably.
Yeah.
Do you recognize this, Charles?
Of course. Your grandfather, me,
Ooh.
Jimmy Cochran, taken shortly before we went to the war.
You guys look like you just won the lottery or something.
Indeed. We were mere children, with no concept of what we were getting into.
What else? The dictaphone?
How about
maybe?
the BH lighter? Maybe he knows what BH is.
Oh, maybe.
I don't need to show him that.
Nope.
Okay.
Dictaphone?
I don't need to show.
Nope. How about this restored picture?
What do you see in this picture, Charles?
Might match the painting.
Fireflies would be my best guess. They can grow terribly large around these parts.
Botany book excerpt?
Do you know what this is?
A flower. Why don't you consult a botanist instead of bothering me with this nonsense?
All right. Easy with the sass. How about the key?
Do you know what this key opens?
You must be truly desperate if you ask random people a question like that.
Maybe.
That's what people do.
Shall we show him the stun gun? Yeah, I think that's probably it for our questions for Mr. Wade.
I think so.
Thanks, Charles. That's all I need for now.
You're welcome, Kathy. Come back anytime.
Look at the gramophone.
Looks like Wade
I
brought
don't
some
know
of his
why.
old tunes with him. Just some boring landscape paintings. Just some boring
Claude?
That guy is huge. I wonder how many cows he eats per day. I'd rather not. He'd crush me like a twig.
Well, we can use the phone.
A private phone. Wade
No, we can't. We can just click on it. Well, all right.
He's also reading his book backwards.
He might be reading a manga.
That's true.
You never know. Shouldn't prejudge Claude just because he.
Except this is what, 95?
This is 95. Yeah. He was early in the trend.
Oh yeah, he's the original.
He's the OG when it comes to anime and manga fans. All right, how do we exit over here? All right. So, now we've got the Church of the Holy Trinity, and we've got the nature reserve where that flower is found.
Yes.
I guess the church is next.
Let's do it.
Hello, Father.
Greetings, my child. I'm glad you decided to come here.
Yeah, but just so you know, I'm not here to join your church or anything.
Oh, I would never assume that.
Good. So, with that out of the way, I have some questions.
Anything you need. I'm Isaac Price.
Kathy Rain, but I'm guessing you figured that out already.
I did. Rumors spread quickly around here. So how can I be of service?
So Isaac Price. So we know that he's the son of the previous priest here, but Price, that must be his father's mausoleum in the graveyard.
Oh, you're right.
All right. Incident in 81.
Do you know anything about what happened to my grandfather in 81?
It was the work of the devil, I'll say that much. Joseph was a kind man. He did not deserve such a fate. You heard my speech at the funeral, Kathy. I meant every word. He was a great man who did much good for this community.
Did you know him personally?
In a way, he and my father did charity work together. Joseph was around a lot when I was young. They collaborated on a few different projects for the homeless and for the troubled youth, among other things.
So my grandfather was a member of the church?
I wouldn't say that, no. He was a friend of the church, but he wasn't a religious man. He believed only in philanthropy. That being said, Joseph was the person who convinced me to become a priest.
Really?
Oh yes, I was a teenager back then, full of rebellion, every fiber of my being wanting to distance myself from my father. Joseph made me realize my sinful pride and showed me how I should follow my heart regardless of what others might think. And for that, I'm eternally grateful.
Does the name Lily Myers mean anything to you?
It does. I was a substitute teacher in her high school for some time before I was ordained.
Really? Did you know her personally?
We weren't close. I only knew her as much as a teacher would know any student.
All right, so how did she seem toward the end?
For one, she started skipping school a lot, and when she did show up, she was absent-minded and moody. She always looked depressed and hunched down like she had a whole world on her shoulders.
Any idea of what caused this change?
Not a clue. All I know is that when she returned from that last summer break, she was a whole different person.
Do you know who Jimmy Cochran is?
I don't recognize that name, no.
Do you know anything about an art theft at the Wade estate in the 80s?
I have just a vague memory of reading about it in the paper.
Care to tell me the history of the church?
I'd be happy to. The story is a fascinating one. This church was founded by my father, William T. Price, in the 70s. Back then, he made his living as a traveling salesman and was driving through this area as he'd done so many times before. However, this day was different. My father held dark thoughts in his mind. He was angry, thinking of evil deeds, even considering swerving off the road into a rock and ending it all. Then suddenly, divine intervention. 3 bright lights appeared. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, the sign of God. This epiphany was the moment my father had been waiting for. He sold all of his belongings and took me and my brother to live with him here in Conwell Springs. Soon thereafter, he built this church and started gathering followers. They began to refer to him as Father Bill.
I take it that window up there resembles what he saw when he had this epiphany?
Indeed. The stained glass window depicts the Holy Trinity as witnessed by my father.
Do you know exactly when or where this event took place?
Why do you ask?
Oh, just curious. It's a captivating story.
Well, it was in the spring of 1971, but my father never told anyone where.
Okay, so what happened then?
People flocked to Father Bill. He started teaching, writing scripture. The church flourished and continued to grow all the way up until his sudden death in 1983.